Okay, so good evening and welcome. This week we are starting CHCDIV002, which is Promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Cultural Safety. We'll begin as usual with our acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Haida Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and the connection to land, sea, and the community. We recognize Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. Okay, so that's particularly cogent tonight, yeah? There's a lot of what's in that one is actually what we're talking about. So we go through our usual housekeeping for the night. So yeah, cameras on, please, microphones off, and using hands up if you need to. And remember your supports, yeah? So respectful communication while you're in here, take care of yourself, look after others, and access your supports if you need them. So yes, as we mentioned there in the acknowledgement of country, it comes up custodians of the land a lot. Up on me there. So where are we at here? Custodians of the land. So what does that term actually mean in terms of First Nations people?
It's about that. Is it right that they never really claimed ownership of the land, but they're actually, as the term suggests, custodians, so they're there to look after it for future generations as opposed to owning it and deciding what happens to it and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, they saw themselves as their land was, although it might have been designated by their nation, yeah, it wasn't theirs to own, it was theirs to take care of and pass on. Yes, correct. All right. So we'll be looking at that notion and a whole bunch of other stuff about First Nations culture over the next 3 weeks, and looking at it in 3 distinct parts, really. Yeah? So tonight we'll be looking at before colonization, and just talking about pretty much a history of First Nations peoples in Australia. So let's get into it. Just going to share this with you. Okay. So as we're going through this, can anyone tell me what is the accepted length of time that currently that they're saying that was the Indigenous people were in Australia before the British came here?
So 60,000 years?
Yeah, so they're saying it's at least 60,000 years now. Obviously, there's more and more discoveries coming along, suggesting it may even be longer than that now. But it's generally accepted that it was at least 60,000 years at the moment. And of that 60,000 years, there is no real written history. What we have are remains of Dreamtime stories, artworks, and etchings that have been used to pass this information on. All right. So yes, so you notice here we're talking about colonization of Australia here when we talk about 1788, not when it was first discovered, but when the first fleet arrived. Yeah. All right. So thinking about how the society was structured back then, yeah. So obviously, they didn't have a money economy, but their society was based around, the daily activities, hunting and gathering society, basically, as every society was at one point. So just talking there about the daily activities that were made by everyone, and the fact that stone tools were probably being used 10,000 years before European cultures used them. And I guess the main thing that has never really come up until recently is just the how diverse the First Nation cultures were. So it wasn't just one Aboriginal nation that was here, obviously. Does anyone tell me exactly how many nations there were, or roughly how many there were?
Was it 500?
Yeah, it's around 500, yes. Obviously, it's hard to be precise about that. But yeah, an accepted number is around 500, yeah. And so this is the map we had a quick look at last week, yeah. So that's pretty much how they're made up now. With all the First Nations that were here beforehand and the parts of Australia that they inhabited. Just to break it down a little bit and have a look at New South Wales here. So that's just the number of languages that were present inside what we currently think of as New South Wales. You can see a couple of dozen there just in one of our states. And the same for Victoria, another couple of dozen. So it was 600 groups they're saying here. I should have said, yeah, not 500, 600 estimated clan groups or nations around the continent. And obviously they each had their own unique skills and Dreamtime stories, languages, traditions, family and kinship groups. Right. So we're probably not going to go out into a breakout room now, but just a little activity for you to do individually and then bring back to us, yeah? Can you go and actually find out what nation's lands you currently reside on? So wherever you are in Australia, just go and have a look and try and find out the name of the nation that was the first indigenous nation that is on the land you currently reside on. Yeah, a little tip for you there. Just Google the name of your town and Aboriginal Land Council. It should bring it up for you.
Well, for me, it's the Yagara people, Yagara tribe.
Yeah. Where is that in Australia, Scott?
Logan in Brisbane, Queensland. Yeah.
How about you, mate?
Yeah, we're in the on the land of the Pinchunga people, the greater tribe that sort of doesn't completely surround us is Bowendick, and then Wiradjuri over near the coast. So yeah, and I'm in southeast South Australia, right down the bottom near Mount Gambier. Penola.
Okay, right. Sammy?
So my shire is made up of 4, but the one that I sit on is Wadawurrung, and I can't pronounce the other ones.
And where is that in Australia?
Beaufort,
Beaufort.
Victoria. Yep.
All right, okay. So I'm up in Queensland on Butcherla lands, yeah, in the White Bay. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. All right. Let's get back to it, yeah. It's not worse. So as we mentioned before, Aboriginals passed on their histories through, not through writings like we're in Western societies. They'll pass on through their stories and their art. Okay, so just going to have a look at one of the ways they did this now. Yeah. It's what they call a totem. Okay. So anyone heard this term before in terms of Aboriginal culture, a totem?
I haven't heard of it in that context.
No, I have to say this is the first one for me as well, yeah? Not in terms of birth totems, yeah? I know they use them for art in the past. I didn't realize that it happened at birth as well, yeah? So the first step to their life cycle, yeah? Which, that's where the custodial roles come from, yeah? So they receive that at birth, yeah? All right, so something is assigned at birth, and well, basically it shapes the direction of their education and becomes a part of their life. Okay, so another concept came up to it was the concept of sacred land, yeah? Being that, the idea behind this being that Aboriginal people lived in both the physical and spiritual world, yeah? They see the land as their mother and is connected to their spirituality, their physicality, and their emotional life. Yeah? And as such, it's what would we say? It's a symbiotic relationship. Yeah. So it's not just something where they take from the land, but they're also required to give back to the land. Yeah. And it's very much based on that concept that we spoke about first. Yeah. They don't own the land; they're merely taking care of it or taking custody of it to pass it on to future generations.
I noticed in some of the material that we had as starting to sort of see it more as not wanting to be represented as just as hunters or gatherers, because they had some established farming methods when the first fleet arrived. and some of the like really large established fields of farming that actually prevented the explorers from getting further distance. So there was proof of their ability to maintain a farmed area as rather just be represented as hunters and gatherers.
You're talking about it in up in some of the northern nations and in the Torres Strait?
From what I thought the material was talking about was in New South Wales.
Yeah, and
Oh,
further
right. I know that it was the basis of the Mabo claims was like that's where it came from. Yeah, it wasn't just free land. It was, although they didn't see it as owned, it wasn't just sitting there doing nothing with it. They were like taking care of it. Yeah, and that's kind of the basis of the Mabo claims back in the 90s.
Yeah, down in Victoria, just across the border from me, they've got remnants of like old. They used to. It was like one of the first examples of. It was like eel farming and stuff like that. So the eels would actually swim out of. We've got a lot of fresh water that lays around and back. Before it was drained after colonisation, it was sort of likened a little bit to Kakadu in how diverse and how much water was there, and the eels would actually swim out into the ocean and go right up along the east coast and spawn, and then the babies would actually swim all the way back down. You know, like that Finding Nemo movie where the turtles catch the EAC. Yeah. And they'd come back and they'd find these little outlets and go back, and they actually still do that. But over in Victoria, I think they're actually going for like World Heritage status. With all of the like established farming, they've got like channels and stuff, and it was all done with rocks and like quite complex.
So when you say, you mean they were using them to trap them, or they actually were farming? Yeah.
Well, I haven't been. We're actually going to go there next week, hopefully. But my understanding is that they would channel them into these areas, and it wasn't just a hunt, but that they would keep them there and use them as a food source and that sort of thing. But hopefully I'll find out more next week. But yeah, I've heard the same as Scott. Like
there's
lots of examples of where they're not just opportunistic hunter gatherers, but there's some quite complex systems in place.
So were you talking specifically about fire stick farming, Scott?
No, I think it was like of yam farming that the material I heard of. So like there was dense farm that it actually blocked the pathway that the explorers were intending to go to, so they had to go around it because they couldn't go through with it. So it had been established, planted, the land had been taken care of to develop that farm.
So in a way to encourage yams to breed more, you mean?
Yeah.
All right. So I know, I mean, obviously, have you heard of fire stick farming before?
Yeah.
Matt, Sammy, you're aware of that one, yeah?
Yeah.
It was basically indigenous nations controlled burning. It's what they used to do to control vegetation and that around there and keep it at a manageable level. And it wasn't like a uniform way of doing it. Like different nations had different ways of doing it for different reasons. But basically the idea of being is stopping the land from becoming too dense, and when there was a fire, for it to be too devastating. Yeah, very similar to what we still do now with controlled burns. All right. Where were we at there? Yes, sacred land. Yeah. Yes, so it's good. And it's, so I guess something we need to mention here is that this connection to country or connection to land that they have is central to Indigenous people's well-being. Yeah. So to them, it's not just the land. Yeah, it's also the people that have come before them and the times that have gone before them. So there's a very strong connection between their well-being and the land that they're on. Evening, Brett.
Evening.
All right. Kinship. Let's go back to share. All right. So again, obviously, when we talk about family units in Indigenous nations, it's probably more correct to talk about kinship. They very, very different ways of organizing themselves to European cultures. And not uniform across all of the nations. Yeah, each clan developed slightly different family structures. I guess is what we would call nuclear and extended families were very different amongst the nations. And yeah, again, not a homogeneous way of doing it. But different nations have slightly different structures. Okay, so I'm going to have a short video basically to introduce this one, and then we'll come back and have a chat about it. Yeah. Okay. Brought up some interesting points there around just how the First Nations are, yeah? And their actual connection to their land and why they can't be moved, yeah? It raises some interesting questions around where do we go in terms of reconciliation, I guess, is the word we really want to use. And as she said there, yeah, you really have to go and talk to the people and start your policies from there, yeah? Which makes it interesting then, because you've got a council of 600, yeah? Or 500 plus that you need to talk to, yeah? Kind of gives you an idea of the enormity or how vast this reconciliation process is going to be. Be very interesting to see how we go in the next 20 years or so. All right, let's get back to it. Sorry, got something in the chat here. Is that Bruce Pascoe? Yeah.
Yeah, I was following up. Yeah, it was a TED talk by Bruce Pascoe that mentioned the farming methods and not necessarily being represented as hunters and gatherers, or just hunters and gatherers, rather.
Okay. I have heard this book, yeah. A little bit controversial, yeah. But I've heard some other people really don't agree with him, yeah. It was interesting, yeah. But I mean, I guess that always happens, yeah. I have heard of this book now that you mention it, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. You said he did a TED talk as well?
Yeah, that's right. That's where I heard from them talking about that, was in a TED talk.
Oh yeah, there it is.
I hadn't researched the legitimacy of it. It was just a TED talk that I came across.
Yeah. So there's the link to that in the chat now if you guys want to watch that a bit later. That's to the TED talk, not to the book. He's actually written many, many books on Indigenous history, yeah. Right, yeah. Where were we? Yeah,
Just on the kinship groups, we travelled through Central Australia 7 or 8 years ago and did some pretty cool Aboriginal tours, like run by Aboriginal people and stuff. And one of them went into quite a lot of detail about the kinship rules, and it was what they were saying. Like, it was quite impressive because, or one of the reasons why it was really strict was like there was no inbreeding, so like you had to skip like several generations, and you couldn't marry anyone from, or be coupled with anybody from that place or that place. And so there was other reasons around it, but they said it was quite, without obviously knowing the science behind, like genetics and how things work and that sort of thing. And they said it was quite an impressive way of keeping things strong and
avoiding that homogeneous gene pool with it. We kept it heterogeneous. Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I guess the main thing to take away from kinship is that it extends beyond your relationships to other people. Yeah. So this is also define their relationship to the land and the resources on it, their responsibilities around that, and to other people in their community, which I guess is a much wider sense of the term. Obviously, we have family relationships, but it doesn't really have anything to do other than describing the relationship here. So it's, as you said, it has broader implications or broader effects on the people involved in it. Yeah. So it's a system of responsibility as much as it is a relationship. And I guess that's another reason why they stick to it so strictly. Yeah, it's more than just a relationship, but also it's like a set of rules or responsibilities for life as well. All right, let's get in and talk about spirituality a little bit. Yeah. All right, so the biggest one for this is talking about the dreaming, or that's the creation story, you might say, yeah. And it's basically the fundamental part of how they view the world, yeah. And again, it's based on that link between land and times past. So they see it as having an ongoing link between the spirit ancestors and Aboriginal people today. So again, as we were saying before, it's not a homogenous thing. It's different in each nation, and they each have their own dreaming stories that's linked to specific parts of the land or the regions that they're in. And they refer to the groups, the stories for that nation, yeah. And then obviously different lands have different nations and therefore different stories and different origins. Okay, it's just repetitive. All right. So I guess the main thing to take away from this is that it's not a compartmentalized view of the world. Yeah, everything is connected to everything else. Yeah, like the bowl of spaghetti. Yeah, so and once it's all mixed in together, everything is connected to everything else and affects everything else. And I guess the other main part to it is too, there's no such thing as inanimate objects in it. Yeah, so rocks, natural forces are all energized by the spirit, as well as everything alive, like animals and plants, which is a very, very different way of looking at things to Western cultures. There you go, that's the term they use for it, animistic, yeah, or meaning interconnected, yeah. So just having a look at how they're descended. So basically they see each person as being descended from something in the past, an animal or a plant, which is the reason for their birth totem. And as such, it comes with their own rules and behaviors, as we learned about before. So this obviously is a different way of doing things, but can anyone think of what we have in Western cultures and Asian cultures as well that is similar to this?
Are you sort of like talking like religion, Ben?
No, not necessarily religion. What's something that we assign to ourselves? It's not based off landforms or celestial bodies or animals or plants. Well, actually, it's based off celestial bodies.
Oh, zodiac sign.
And in Asian cultures, they have something similar. It's based on animals. Yeah. Okay. We don't see it as, obviously the main difference there is we don't see it as being descended from that. Yeah. So for indigenous peoples, they're actually descendants of those animals or plants. So let's moving on. Let's talk a little bit about the dreaming. Okay. So it's a lot more complex than I ever knew. My initial understanding of this was that it was a number of stories and arts, but as you can see from this picture, yeah, there's a lot more to it than yeah, just a bit of art and storytelling. Yeah. So you can see all of those elements in there. Okay. So the beginning, everything stems from the dreaming, obviously. Technology, law, fibercraft, everything extending from that. From the dreaming, obviously, first came the land, water, and sky, and then came the people. Not too dissimilar to the Christian religion's story of creation. Obviously, though, that there is no central God figure that created the land, water, and sky as there is in Christian religions. And again, they've chosen this way to represent it because each of these things, right, comes through people, the land, water, and sky, to the dreaming, and in that way, everything is connected to everything else in here. So it's that representation of everything is connected. As I say, yeah, it's an ongoing link between the spirit ancestors and Aboriginal people, animals, and nature. Which brings us to a very interesting concept there, that time is cyclic rather than linear. Very, very different from Western cultures. Obviously, we have a past, present, and a future. Aboriginals see it more as a circle, so rotating through and coming back to the beginning and then moving through it again. So you can see that in the second last point there. So the dreaming is the place where the spirit came from and to which it will return. So talking specifically now about the dream time. So this is what they see as the beginning of it, yeah? Right, every culture has its creation story, so dream time is the creation period for the ancestors where they shaped the world and every natural thing came out of it, yeah? So separate from Western ideas of a single being creating it, they believe there was a number of spirits that created everything and every natural thing inside it. And so this is where they see their rules for relationships come from, yeah? From the dreaming. It sets the rules for their relationships between themselves, between the land, and this was all set down at the beginning of time, right? Right. And these are the stories, the creation stories that they came, and how the lands were created and why the animals and the planets exist, yeah? So it has a very, very strong impact on Aboriginal law, right? So we're going to have a look at one specific dreaming story here. And it's pretty much focused on explaining how different language groups came to share the same stories. Okay. So that's where the platypus came from, yeah? Explains a lot. So what do you think the moral of that story was, yeah? Or why do you think it was created, yeah? What were they trying to teach their young people from that?
Stick together and don't wander off.
Yeah, very, very similar to a lot of cultural stories, yeah? Listen to your parents, stay close to each other, don't wander off alone, yeah? All right. All right. So I think we are almost, yeah, we're exactly 7 o'clock, yeah? So we'll have a break for 10 minutes and then come back, yeah? All right. Interesting, yeah. Matt? So what did you guys think of that, yeah?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It's I've heard sort of numerous things along those lines in the past, and I was just had a look before. So the place that we're probably going to go and or hopefully go and see next week is called Budj Bim. So BUDJBIM, and yeah, it's this big sort of aquaculture setup that but I think it's been dated at over 6,000 years old. And you can do cultural tours and all kinds of stuff, but it's just become World Heritage in the last, I think maybe only like, I don't know, I'll be guessing, but probably like only 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe even more recently than that.
Right. Okay. Some interesting ideas in there. It's interesting to see people's reaction to it. Yeah. It's extremely polarizing. Right. You go and you have a look at his book. It has an overall rating of 3 because 100 people have given it 5 and 100 people have given it 1. And then there's a few little differences in the middle there. It's amazing how polarizing his ideas are. Yeah. I would like to know more about his information sources. Yeah. It's very interesting that it's coming straight from diaries. Yeah. I don't know too much about like where those diaries came from. Scott, did you hear any more about that?
No, I didn't hear any more about that. No.
Right. I desperately want to talk to Bruce Pascoe now, really. How about you, Britt? What did you think of that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I didn't know the story behind this, but it's kind of interesting because I'm South African, and as you all know, it's something similar to Australia. But it's interesting that he says, you know, everything essentially started with them. Like I'm mixed, so I've got half Dutch and half. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Khoi people in South Africa. It's like the brown people of South Africa.
Yeah.
So I'm basically like half and half. So it's something similar to the Aboriginals and but it's just like for myself as well, I would say it's half true. And then yeah, so it is kind of controversial for myself as well, just thinking that he's getting all of this information and back home it's exactly the same. And I'm also like stuck in the middle. Is it true? Is it not true? Oh, sorry. So it's yeah. I would actually like to go deeper into this and just see where and how.
Yeah. There was a couple of claims at the end there that seemed to be getting a little bit fanciful, like the bread, and then they showed like the wholemeal bread. I'm like, I'm not sure where that one came from, but I was the farms, like just the natural farming and how they spread out and cleared land. Yeah, that was very, very interesting. Yeah. You could definitely see that happening. What about the you were talking earlier, Matt, about the farming of the fish. Is that what he was talking about in there? Is that what you meant?
I don't know about that. I missed the first part of that talk. Sorry, I was hanging out washing actually.
Okay.
So I only came in sort of about the last 5 or 6 minutes.
So it was kind of like well, I suppose it wasn't really farming fish, but they would use structures to kind of channel the fish into a place that made them very easy to catch. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I heard that bit. Yeah. No, this was more around Budgebim is more about the eels.
Right.
The freshwater eels. Oh well, they actually
The similar thing though. They kind of built structures to funnel them into a certain place, or did they actually dam them off and breed them and then use them?
I'm just sort of scrolling through it now. It said that it, I guess it maintained populations for over 6,000 years using, so as a volcanic rock to construct channels, weirs and dams, manage water flows, trap, store, and harvest. So yeah, it's they describe it as an aquaculture system. So they definitely funneled them into those areas. And like I said, there was a lot of water sitting around, and we've got like quite a volcanic history going into Western Victoria.
Yeah.
But it was more about, yeah, like the storage and that sort of thing. So they obviously channeled them in, but then had, I guess, I don't know, areas where they were kept alive and that sort of thing. So yeah, aquaculture is how it's described.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, so there's not a lot else for us to cover tonight. I'm going to stop our recording here, actually.